Welcome to CBSE English Tutorial, a visual guide.
Henley-on-Thames is a charming historic town in Oxfordshire, England, located along the peaceful banks of the River Thames. The town is known for its scenic river views, traditional English buildings, and the famous Henley Royal Regatta, an international rowing event held every year on the Thames. The calm atmosphere of Henley, with its flowing river, green countryside, and slow rhythm of life, creates a feeling of nostalgia and reflection. Such surroundings often inspire writers to think about memories, childhood, family relationships, and the passage of time. Shirley Toulson was born here on the 20th of May, 1924. She grew up in a cultured family that valued literature and learning. Her early life in the quiet English countryside helped shape her deep sensitivity toward emotions, memories, and human relationships. She later studied English at Brockenhurst College, and then at Birkbeck College, University of London. Her studies strengthened her love for poetry and storytelling. Many of her works reflect themes such as memory, family bonds, history, and the emotional power of simple objects. Some of her well-known works include The Drovers, Celtic Journeys, The Celtic Year, and The Celtic Alternative. One of her most famous poems studied in schools is A Photograph. In this poem, the poet looks at an old photograph of her mother as a young girl standing on a beach with her cousins. The photograph brings back memories of happiness from the past, but at the same time, it also reminds the poet that her mother is no longer alive. Through this simple photograph, the poem beautifully explores three powerful ideas: the memories of the past, the passage of time, and the quiet grief that follows the loss of a loved one. In this way, the reflective mood of the poem strongly connects with the calm and nostalgic environment of the English countryside where Shirley Toulson grew up.
All right, everyone, today we're going to jump into a poem that's short, but trust me, it packs an incredible punch. We're talking about Shirley Toulson's A Photograph, and it's all about time, memory, and loss.
And I want to kick things off with the big question this poem basically drops in our laps. What happens when a memory, like something captured in a picture, is all that you have left of someone you love? Let's just keep that thought in the back of our minds as we go through this. Okay, so the poem starts by taking us way back to this single happy moment that happened even before the poet was born. And it all kicks off with, believe it or not, a simple piece of cardboard. And boom, right away, we're right there in the scene with her. The speaker's looking at this old photograph, a snapshot of her mom as a kid, maybe 12 years old or so, on a beach trip with her two younger cousins.
So what are we seeing in this picture? Well, it's a totally classic family moment, right? You've got the poet's mother, who she calls the big girl at 12, with her two cousins on either side, and they're all holding hands. They're smiling, their hair's probably getting blown around by the sea breeze, and they're looking at their uncle, who's the one taking the picture. It's just this perfect, innocent, happy moment, completely frozen in time.
But then the poem makes this really interesting turn. It asks a pretty deep question. I mean, the girls, that happy moment, that's all in the past. It's gone. But what hasn't changed? And this line just brilliantly gets to the heart of the whole poem. The sea, this huge, powerful backdrop to this little happy memory, it's still there. It looks pretty much the same, but it's washing over their feet, which the poet calls terribly transient. So transient just means something that doesn't last, something impermanent. And wow, that word choice is just devastatingly perfect, isn't it? It creates this massive contrast between the sea, which feels eternal and unchanging, and human life, which is so fleeting and temporary. Those happy little feet are long, long gone, but the sea is still there.
All right, let's jump into the second stanza now and see where she takes this idea. We're going to fast forward in time, maybe 20 or 30 years after that picture was actually taken.
And right away, you can feel the perspective shift. We're not just looking at the photo anymore. Now we're remembering the poet's mother as a grown-up, laughing at that same picture of herself as a kid. You can almost hear her, pointing out her cousins, Betty and Dolly, and joking about how they were all dressed for the beach back then.
Okay, so this is super important. We now have two layers of loss happening at the same time. For the mother, her past is that happy day at the beach, a memory she loved. But for the poet, her past is the memory of her mother's laughter while looking at that photo. And the sad part? Both of those pasts are gone for good.
And the way the poet describes this complicated feeling is just incredible. She says both memories, the holiday and the laughter, are wry, which means they're kind of tinged with this bittersweet, knowing sadness. They're remembered with the labored ease of loss. And what a phrase. It's that strange paradox, right, of trying to act like you're okay with a loss, even when it's incredibly hard to carry.
And that brings us to the final stanza. And honestly, this is the most heartbreaking part. We're jumping forward one last time, to the present day for the poet, and we learn her mother has been gone for a long time. The way this is delivered is just so stark. It's almost mathematical. The poet says her mother has now been dead for nearly as many years as that little girl in the photo had lived.
Think back to that girl in the picture. She was about, 12 years old. Just a young girl, totally full of life, full of promise, with her whole future ahead of her.
And now, that very same number, 12, also represents how long she's been gone. The poem creates this really stark, painful balance between that vibrant life in the photograph and the long, quiet grief that came after.
Then the poem says, "And of this circumstance, there is nothing to say at all." So, what is this circumstance? What is it that's left the poet completely speechless?
Well, this circumstance is the one big, unchangeable fact, her mother's death. It's the grief, it's the emptiness, it's the silence that now just hangs over everything, the photo, the memory of her mother's laugh, everything. The loss is so huge, so total, that there are no words for it. And the poem closes with this absolutely haunting phrase, that silence. The silence of the loss is so deep, so complete, that it just snuffs everything else out. It silences the poet. It silences the memory. And it pretty much silences the poem itself. There's just nothing left to say. So let's zoom out and pull this all together. What we've seen is that the poem really takes us on a journey through three totally different phases of time and memory, and each stanza is like a different stop on that journey. So first up, we have the mother's past, that happy moment at the beach before the poet was even born. Then, phase 2 is the poet's own past, her memory of her mom remembering that moment. And finally, we land in the poet's present, where she's all alone with that photograph and just the overwhelming silence of her loss.
When you really think about it, a photograph shows us that a memory isn't just some static image locked away. It's a living, breathing thing that changes over time. It can start as pure joy, then become a bittersweet memory, and finally, it can turn into a silence so deep you can't even talk about it. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How do the photos and memories in our own lives shape our understanding of what it means to remember and what it means to lose someone?
Now let us look at some important literary devices used in the poem A Photograph by Shirley Toulson. First, we have alliteration, which is the repetition of the same starting sound in nearby words. This creates a musical effect in poetry. For example, stood still to smile, terribly transient, and silences. Next is imagery. Imagery helps the reader create a clear picture in the mind. Lines like, "The cardboard shows me how it was," and "Her hair was a tangle of gold," help us visualize the scene in the photograph. Another device is personification, where non-living things are given human qualities. In the poem, the sea is described as washing the girls' feet, almost as if it is gently interacting with them. We also see a transferred epithet in the phrase, terribly transient feet. Here, the word transient does not actually describe the feet. It describes the short and temporary nature of human life. Then comes an oxymoron, which combines two opposite ideas for deeper meaning. The phrase, labored ease of loss, shows the emotional struggle involved in accepting loss. The poem also uses symbolism. The photograph itself becomes a symbol of memory. It captures a happy moment from the past and reminds us that while human life passes away, memories and nature continue. Another important device is contrast. The poet contrasts the young, happy girl in the photograph with the silence after the mother's death, highlighting the passage of time. We also notice enjambment, where a sentence continues from one line to the next without a pause. This makes the poem flow naturally, like thoughts and memories unfolding. There is also irony in the poem. The photograph that once made the poet's mother laugh now becomes a source of deep sadness for the poet. Finally, we see allusion in the word cardboard. It indirectly refers to the photograph itself, reminding us how fragile and delicate memories can be. Through these literary devices, Shirley Toulson beautifully expresses memory, time, and the quiet pain of loss.
Thank you for watching. See you again in a bit.